So again, this is Women in Black Resistance, our panel. While we're waiting for more folks to join us, please take a look at the prompt, the question right here, and think about that for a second. My name is Malcolm Harris. I will be your moderator today for the panel. I'm going to be passing the mic to folks. All right. So, folks are going to be coming in a second. As they're coming in, is anybody ready to respond? You could have been anywhere. You could have been anywhere else. Why this workshop? Who wants to respond? Anybody have a response? Why this workshop? Out of all of the workshops. You have something? Yeah, why this workshop for you was important to come to?
I think for me, I wanted to join this workshop just because like I also wanted to I wanted to educate myself just about like what happened. I'm from Stockton and so like yeah, yes, 209. So I think I just really wanted to educate myself, also like how to be in like solidarity with y'all as well. And then I also wanted to learn like what um climate resiliency actions y'all took after the fact of like the disaster and just like what y'all are going to do moving forward. So yeah.
After which disaster?
Um,
Climate resilience. Uh-huh. In Altadena. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. So, what was your name? Rachel. Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Anybody else? Why this workshop? What brought you to this one? You could have been anywhere else. Huh? We'll get there in a second. Okay. Look, this is just an open now. All right. You to this group. You gonna say something? Yeah, sure.
Whoa, that's loud. Um, I mean, I think all our liberation is tied up together, and I want the loved ones I have who are black to be free. So, like at a basic level, that. But also, I'm just curious at like what connections y'all are drawing between community-owned housing and a broader movement for racial justice.
Anything else before we get started? This is just a prequel, the warm up before we get started. Yes. Okay, Matt.
Yeah, because CLTs are a black invention, and we're petitioners of that. How about that?
Hey. Hey. So with that in mind, unless anybody else wants to share why this workshop, as I see the mud cloth right here with Africa. So before we get started today, we wanted to pay honor to the to African people in the Americas, and that our bodies are still here, and that we still survive, and that some of us have transitioned and become elders. So I wanted to bring our sister Shakira up to talk about our latest ancestor.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for everyone being in the room. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. My name is Shakira Mingo. And if you can hear me, clap once because this is important. So if you are talking, if you can just lower your voice or remain silent for a little bit, because we are about to have a moment of silence for Assata Shakur. Okay. So Assata Shakur, she is a Black activist, Black liberation activist. She was with the Black Panther Party. Um, Back in the 70s, they had falsely accused her of killing a cop, which she did not do because her hands was up. So if your hands is up and you don't have no weapons, how can you kill somebody? Can't, right? So it was a way to dismantle the Black Panther Party as they did. And Cuba, gave blessings to Cuba. Cuba was like, nah, you ain't about to be in jail for something you ain't do. So come here. So Cuba had her Cuba, so she lived in Cuba. Okay. So she lived in Cuba as an asylum seeker, and the U.S. was like, y'all need to bring her back here. And Cuba was like, she's staying with us. And she stayed in Cuba until she passed today. So we would like to have a moment of silence for Asada Shakur, Ibashe to the answer Ashe to Asada Shakur. So let's just take a minute to honor her. Thank you. Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, sister, and thank you for lifting that up this morning. And I had not known, and so thank you for sharing that information. So my name is Malcolm Harris. I am going to be your moderator today. I wanted to, before we start our panel, I just wanted to remind us that next year is, guess what next year is the 60th anniversary of? 4 generations. Guess what? Next year. It was founded in Oakland, this group. Which one? Black Panther Party. Thank you. And so, and how many of us were born during the time that the Black Panther Party was founded? You ain't got to necessarily raise your hand. Okay, a couple of us. But probably a good amount of us in the room were not. How many of us are familiar with the Panthers 10-point program? Yeah. So thinking about the Panthers, Roberto, hey, so thinking about the Panthers 10-point program, how much in the 4 generations since 1966, their 10-point program included housing, the access to jobs to be able to pay for that housing, right? The education to be able to create that. And then also stopping the violence from the police against Black bodies. How much of that has changed in 60 years? Again, next year is the 60th anniversary. Tell us. I see some now than nothings. What has changed significantly for African bodies? Nothing? Who would struggle with that? Please struggle with us if there's something. So appreciation for naming, for sharing your feelings about that. And so we're going to be talking today in the context of that and in the context of when we talk about Black, because we should name who we mean, that we mean people who look like me, people who look like her, people who look like her, people who look like Zarita right there in that red shirt. And my people are from Colombia. So folks are African bodies are in Jamaica, right? African bodies are in Mexico. And like, I don't know how many folks are clear about the struggle right now with the Chiquita banana company in Boca del Toro in Panama and Mexican Panamanians who are in the middle, who are in the heart of that struggle. And that our liberation around Blackness is not just here in this country, but that everywhere we are, the struggles remain similar and that we are still seen as Black. Does that make sense to folks? And so for us, that's who we name when we talk about Black communities. We name that who we are and that we are also immigrant Africans and that we are organizing across internal challenges around class, around a variety of needs, etc., unhoused communities. And while everyone is struggling in California, all communities, the struggle of African bodies or people who live in bodies like ours are different. And so it's important for us to name that and that we know that in communities who we should be aligned with, we are not always seen as a part of those communities, even though we come from the similar countries, right? So we want to name that and talk about how do we build across tensions and how do we create opportunities to have deep solidarity, engagement that don't change because an immediate problem has been solved. How can we create generational solutions to this? So is there any questions about any of that? Owen? So I wanted to name specifically here in California, history of this struggle has been and wanted to name historically Black communities that are no longer with us. That, again, gentrification and displacement is happening, but communities in Weed, which is about 50 miles north of California, Redding, there was a fire there, I think, in the last 10 years, and that historically Black community is no longer there. People remember that. I know my family does. I'm from Oakland. When I was a kid in Oakland, we were 47% of the population. We're 25% now. My parents are from a town called East Palo Alto. When they came here from Texas and Louisiana, we had a push to name East Palo Alto, Nairobi in the 80s, and all of those Black bodies that were there are no longer there. There are struggles in San Diego and Sacramento and Oak Park, in communities across the state and in South Central Los Angeles. And so part of how we're here is to talk about the fact that while all of us are struggling, the impacts on Black community have not been the same. And so how do we create, again, as we walk in bodies that are still physically Black and that are responded to as Black? And so how do we build across that? And so how do we build across that history? And so we have a wonderful panel here today that I am so happy and proud to be a part of so that we can talk about real solutions to that. But what I wanted to name too is that all of y'all are here for our group. We will have a chance for everyone to be involved. Because we only got 70 minutes, I will be prioritizing African bodies and opportunities for us to come in and engage with each other. So you will see me calling on people and then creating opportunity and space for non-African folks to come in. Oh, and when I say African, and again, we could be African Latino, we could be African from the continent, we could be Jamaican, et cetera, but that's who I mean, again, for clarification. But I wanted to introduce our panel. And can I get somebody to help me out with time? Yeah, who's that? Who said sure? Oh, appreciation, Miriam. So I wanted to introduce our panelists today who are Tekoah with the Allensworth Progressive Association, Paul with the Liberty Community Ecosystem that includes the Liberty Community Land Trust and the Liberty Community Co-op model, among other things. Princess, Danielle and Princess with the Richmond Community Land Trust. And then we have other partners in the room who are in solidarity with us, who are also part of historically Black communities like Altadena. So we've got Miriam and Adriana. Oh, Adriana. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yeah, cool. With the Altadena Community Land Trust. So we will be bringing them in to be a part of the conversation too. But to kick us off, you frame, don't look all startled. So I should mention, my name is Malcolm Harris. I am the organizing director with the Oakland Black Organizing Project. Hey, I am from Oakland, born and raised from the town, but I have been doing the majority of my organizing in South Central LA, which there is a lot of alliance with, and most of my organizing has been on behalf of Black communities. That if we can organize us, we can build with our neighbors. All of us will benefit. And so I was a part of the Liberty Community Land Trust organizing efforts and downtown Crenshaw efforts to buy the community mall and create a Black-centered vision for what development can look like in Black community. But did I hear a little hand? All right, go ahead. Right. So give it to our folks like Paul. So here you go, brother.
Okay, as Malcolm just mentioned, Liberty Community Land Trust kind of grew out of a decades long mission of which really started when we moved into the neighborhood, into the Crenshaw community, a community to which many African Americans were banned from through restricted covenants, and we were in many areas was known as sundown town, or sundown section of LA. As those covenants fell, we moved in and built a strong African American community in partnership with the Japanese American community in that area as well. And over time, however, we've been working to keep that community somewhat cohesive. But right now, we're having a couple of things happening, primarily gentrification. Now, prior to gentrification, we had not the highway come through, but the trains come through. And that became a rallying point to make sure that the subways that literally two lines cut right through our neighborhood, to make them more responsive to our neighborhood and not to people from the destination or from the origin to the destination there. So folks rallied around the what's the expo line first, right? Yeah, making sure there was proper stops, right? So, right. So, over there. And then with the new K line, which was linking LAX to this burgeoning subway system there that was cutting right through Crenshaw Boulevard. Half of it they put under, the other half was going above. So we struggled with the Crenshaw Subway Coalition came together to make sure that that line would be safe because it was going literally down the middle of Crenshaw through in front of high schools and elementary schools where kids were going to be crossing constantly. So it did not make sense to have a train going through there. So we were rallying around those points and we were successful in getting some stations added. Ultimately, they went and did keep the subway above ground in that section. We were trying to get it under. But that kind of set the stage. The organizing that was built on that set the stage for taking on the next battle, which was happening, which was gentrification. Now, gentrification was led by the Dolphins. I call them Dolphins because they're flippers. I'm sorry, I go back to my childhood. I can't help it. But we're literally folks were walking around just buying up whatever house they could because there was also the emergence in Southern California, or at least in the LA area, of what was known as Silicon Beach. A lot of the Bay Area companies, the Silicon Valley companies, suddenly discovered the beach in SoCal and were setting up offices or facilities down in our area, and so suddenly our housing became very, very attractive. As a result, houses that were actually still at a pretty high level were now like doubling in value, literally within months or so. And so we used the organizing strength of the subway coalition to pull folks together for a panel on or a symposium on gentrification. And we had a lot of discussion on that. And out of it popped, let's do a land trust, similar to what we had seen across the country. And just happened to be in the audience at that time. I just moved back to LA from Boston, where I worked with Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative and created Dudley Neighbors Inc. And said, why don't you guys? I know how to do that, and so I got pulled in as a volunteer, and then eventually as a interim executive director. I'm still waiting for that to go because I'm retired. But but that's that and that so the organizing tied in that carried through to when we were trying to do our land assembly. We spoke to folks about part of the pitches we made to some people is instead of going with the flippers, go with us because we're trying to keep that land, keep this property in the community, or so we can keep folks like us in the community and within, low and moderate income people that can remain in the community in some cases, your neighbors, some cases, your neighbors' kids or so. And that was helpful with a few of the folks that we approached. We were fortunate to be able to benefit from yet another organizing campaign we had, which was to buy the Crenshaw Mall, the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall. We were fortunate and able to raise a substantial amount of cash for that, and we were our investors or donors allowed us to reprogram that into purchasing land. So.
And just to add, thank you, Paul. And also to add to this, because I think this is an important piece I was a part of the organizing around the acquisition of the land. But the organizing of a coalition that brought Black South Central together across class, across market rate, Section 8 renters, across unhoused communities. So we had to be very thoughtful about bringing all aspects of our communities together, including talking about undocumented Black immigrants, who we have a number of Black immigrants who are in our community, and a good amount of them who are also undocumented. So how do we talk about that and all the layers of that and our internal challenges to building solidarity and a coalition amongst ourselves? So thank you for naming that, Paul, because that was not easy work, but our organizing efforts helped to make that happen. Next, I wanted to bring in Brother Tekoah with the Allensworth Progressive Association to talk about their work in Allensworth and historical Black.
Thank you all for coming and joining us in Rooted in Black Resistance. My name is Tekoah Kadara with the Allensworth Progressive Association. I'm a third generation leader in the community of Allensworth. And what I find when I talk to people about Allensworth is most people have never heard of it. And if so, they just know a little bit. So just a little bit of history in a nutshell. Allensworth is the first all Black township in California after the Civil War, founded in 1908. Founded by Lieutenant Colonel Allen Allensworth, who was a former slave, runaway slave, joined the Union Army, rose to the highest ranks in the military as a Black man of those times. Worked with Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver to establish Allensworth as Tuskegee University of the West Coast. Okay, so when Colonel Allensworth came to Allensworth, it wasn't just a bunch of farmers. It was educators. It was inventors. It was woodworkers, steel workers. Brought innovation with him to Allensworth, and the town thrived. But like many other communities in that era, it was systematically taken down around water and economy. The town began to die off in the 1920s. My story begins in the 70s when my grandmother, Eddie Morrison, moved into Allensworth. I call her the preserver because in this era, there were people that didn't want to see Allensworth survive. They didn't want to see Allensworth thrive. So a dairy farm wanted to move right across the street from Allensworth. Now, those that have talked to me, I've invited everyone to Allensworth. I wouldn't feel comfortable inviting you to Allensworth had there been a 20,000, 30,000 cow mega dairy next to Allensworth. So my grandmother, the preserver, is who fought this off. Following my grandmother, my mother stepped into place, and we call them like the honorary mayors, the matriarchs of the community. My mother, I call her the capacity builder because with her background in urban and city planning, they were able to pull in engineers. They were able to hire folks like myself, counterpart in the background, Jose Armando, who some of you guys heard speak yesterday. And we call ourselves the new wave, the next generation of how to make Allensworth move forward and take Allensworth forward in a new direction. And part of that is looking at some of the land around us because I hear community land trust, and a lot of it is around housing. We're looking at a community land trust around agriculture and how to properly steward the land again and take care of the land again. So with that being said, our main focus is to purchase some land, put it in a community land trust. We have projects around agrivoltaics, which would provide our community power sovereignty, food sovereignty, chemical free, chemical free agriculture is another huge thing that we want to do because we're we're not eating good food. You know, you go to the stores and you find that food is not healthy. There's not farmers markets in Allensworth. We're in a food desert. It's 20 miles for a bottle of water. We have arsenic in our water. So when we're talking about resistance, it's this new wave that's working with Dr. Gatgill at UC Berkeley around arsenic remediation technology to take arsenic out of our water, to work with a number of these consultants around these pistachio orchards and things like that in our community, how we can clean the water, how we can clean our air, and how we can be an example for a region and not continue to perpetuate the cycle of industrial agriculture, which continues to take rural America down while they pump themselves up. So another main thing is solidarity. You know, Allensworth was once an all Black town, as I mentioned. Now it is 97% Latino. We're on the lands of the ancestral Yokuch people. So we're working together with all community in solidarity. Our Black community, our Indigenous community, our Latino community, our Filipino community, who are all been part of this land during this time. So, yeah, my message to everyone is we got to do it together. We've tried to do it by ourselves at different points in our history, and we have to join forces in order to make things happen. Because if we understand our past, we can grow our future in a better way. Thank you.
And for clarification, Tekoah, when you name Latino or Spanish-speaking populations that you're working with, we're talking about primarily non-Black. Okay, and y'all will hear me referencing that because again, we want to make sure that we're always thinking about the fact that like Latinidad or Latinos are not a race, and that we want to make sure that African bodies are being thought of in those contexts. And we also wanted to bring into the space Princess and Danielle with the Richmond Community Land Trust. Share a little bit about their efforts and what's happening in North Richmond and in Richmond.
Thank you, Malcolm. Princess Robinson, she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director for Richmond Land. Richmond Land was founded in 2018 by a group of people coming together just trying to do something about housing. And Richmond at the time was going through a lot, right? And so we were like, we want to create this entity that can take land and property, right? But we didn't know exactly what that entity will look like. We haven't heard of land trust before, right? So we were just kind of in that space. But at the time in North Richmond specifically, Housing Authority owns their project-based housing. So our projects in North Richmond is scattered around our neighborhood. So I don't know. Okay, so like on every other block, there's a project unit. And during 2019, Housing Authority announced that they couldn't rehab their properties anymore. They were just going to sell them. And Richmond Land came out of this effort of our flagship development project, which we're calling the North Richmond Eco Village now, out of this effort of trying to get that land and those properties back. So what we did in 2018, they announced they weren't rehabbing. They were just gonna sell it on Zillow. They relocated everyone in 2020. So during a pandemic, they silently relocated everyone. And after that year, we were all looking around, and on every other block, you see a vacant unit, abandoned home. In North Richmond is a very historical place for Black people. It was one of the only places that Black people could purchase a home after World War II, right? When so many people migrated to work on the shipyards to Richmond. This was the only place that Black people could buy homes. The neighborhood was predominantly Black. Our project-based housing was predominantly Black people. So after they're relocated, that face of our community was gone in 2020. And we're like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? So Richmond Land, we were like organizing, its members and its staff were organizing around like still trying to figure out an entity that could purchase land and property. And a land trust model came about as we were organizing. And we formed the land trust specifically because of this development project, right? So what was like, we were like, okay, we have this idea of trying to get more housing, of trying to create more housing. And I'm walking my son to school every day and I'm walking past abandoned homes, vacant lots, and we still trying to figure out how to get housing. I'm confused, right? Like I'm confused. So then we started organizing around those specific properties. So we went to housing authorities like, hey, actually, y'all can't sell this property. Isn't this public housing? Right? It's like now we like put that idea out there. Then we had to do so much work. We had to advocate for years, right? We had to advocate for a long time with the housing authority to just work with us, to just like be in space with us. Like, can you just come to a meeting with us? Can we present you this idea? Right. And fortunately for us, our housing authority, they're, really cool guys. They're like, yeah, let's do it. And we got in space together. We organized around these properties. We were able to get awarded parcels from these properties. So they were able to sell these properties back to us, not just us, but other developers in the other stakeholders in the community for $1, right? And they were like, okay, cool, we got these parcels. We're about to create, we're about to we're about to create more housing, but housing isn't enough. What about everyone had literally forgot about the people that live there? So, okay, we're gonna get this, these parcels. Now we need to create policies. So we implemented a just right to return policy. So now that anyone who purchases any of these properties has to prioritize our former residents that live there. We also implemented a policy for local preference. If you're going to sell these properties, you need to put our people first. Black people, BIPOC people, low income people, people from North Richmond, they need to be able to purchase it first, right? Because we didn't want to just, you know, create housing and not have those. So we're still organizing on this project, you guys, and it's just starting. As you know, it's going to be a long, long time until we actually make it happen. But the land trust, right, the model was so important to us because it's not enough to just create housing. I can get a house now, but something traumatic may happen in my life and I'm not going to be able to afford it. So how do we permanently create housing for people? And I think the land trust is going to help us do that, right, for this specific development project. So we're hoping to bring to North Richmond 16 to 22 small units for folks that actually lived in the projects who didn't have a high income, right, to be able to afford home ownership. And we're so excited about this project because it just means to me personally a lot because I got family, right? I got an older sister who lived in these projects for 20 plus years. And we're talking people, generations of family. These are not just housing units. These are like generations of people who made this community, and we cannot forget about them. And so we need to prioritize people. And I was just talking to someone outside about BIPOC, the word BIPOC communities, right? It's a word, yes, it's okay, but we sometimes really need to explicitly say, actually, this is for Black people. Okay? And not be embarrassed by it, not be mad. Like, it's okay to say, actually, this house, we're going to prioritize Black people for this housing. And that's fine. And that's what we need to do. And we need to do more of it. And all of our, people of color, right, come together. We can all come together. That's important. But it's always also important to acknowledge Black people here in America and the things that we've been through. And like I said, I was telling y'all about the housing, how they were just didn't give up. Like they were literally just relocated people and they were just going to sell those properties. And that's just not okay. Right. So I'm glad to be on this panel with y'all and talk more in discussion with y'all. And yeah, let's get real.
Right. And so on that note, part of the work, and thank you for framing that, Princess, because again, as I named before, we all live in California. For those of us who've been in LA, we know that there are real tensions in our communities. And we know who those tensions are between. Even as we talk about the fact that in the United States, the community land trust model was created by Black farmers out of resistance and need. And we know that in Brazil, it's the same. There are movements that are being led by African people in Brazil, African Brazilians, around similar issues, Colombia, Panama, and all of these places. So part of our work too with the Liberty ecosystem is working in solidarity with these international models. And more importantly, how to just talk about the fact that in South Central Los Angeles, we are the only community we working with the Black Worker Center and doing a survey with the LA Federation of Labor. We're the only community in Los Angeles that lives the way that we do across times, that we live together. So the mall, you got the Baldwin Hills looking right down on it, while you got the jungle across the street from it and Lamert Park. There's a reason for that, and it is about how we live together as Black people. So we want to be very upfront about talking about that today. And that I want to name that in California, just Black folks, and y'all Black folks in the room, we know this. We're speaking up and naming Blackness in non-Black spaces. That's the kind of looks we get. Please, Dad, I see the head nodding and the eyes looking at me because we know. Yeah, we know. So we want to create a space for us to feel comfortable here in that space and name that. And that the fact that so many other folks are in the room sharing space. How can we name that and create solidarity opportunities to build together around that with these generational issues that we're dealing with? That makes sense. So I'm gonna stop running off at the mouth. And I wanted to introduce Matt Boo and bring him into the conversation. So we want to start opening it up and talk about what does solidarity look like? So many faces are here. Can we talk about what real solidarity efforts look like? What are the challenges? What are the real challenges? And name them and talk about how we can build across those. So, Matt, if you want to open us up.
Hi everyone, how are we all doing today? My name is Matthew Vu. I'm the campaign manager for the Los Angeles Community Land Trust Coalition. I also serve as board president of the Beverly, Vermont Community Land Trust in Koreatown. And third hat, I am an advisor, non-voting steering committee member on the Altadena Earthseed Community Land Trust. And if you heard Earthseed, that's correct. Octavia Butler Malia. Um, For those of you who may not be familiar with Altadena, Altadena is a special place steeped in legacy of redlining and exclusion from Pasadena, of disinvestment by the county, and now destruction in the face of like the Eden Fire. However, that's not how Altadenans that I organize with choose to, know their town, right? Altadena is a place of resistance, of resilience, of creativity, of incredible collaboration and care and concern and neighborliness that is unseen elsewhere in Los Angeles. And it's that legacy that I was called upon to serve and to advocate on behalf of. So at the beginning of the fires, um, I was already like supporting some artists and activists to socialize the idea of community ownership and collectivism in the rebuild. And then it became my professional piece when we started doing policy and stuff like that. But I want to highlight Miriam over here. Miriam was one of the first folks that I organized a panel with at the Altadena Library to talk about efforts to expand community land trusts in Los Angeles. And also I'm here with Adriana Bautista, who helped get our campaigns off the ground to fight for a community acquisition fund in Altadena, right? Um, in this entire process, like I don't know how it's kind of staggering. One of our partners, Strategic Actions for a Just Economy, Sage, created a report that showed how speculative investment had increased tenfold over the previous year. And that number continues to balloon by the day, right? Altadena, oh, and I would be remiss if I did not say this, but Altadena is also a legacy of incredible Black home ownership. The rate is 80%, double that of the national rate. And so this community is held together by legacies of incredible mutual aid and support. And the community land trust aspect emerged very quickly. You know, folks were reaching out to me left and right saying, do we need to incorporate a land trust today? And my answer has always been eventually, but what's more important is the organizing. It's the seeding of the values, is bringing people together, is bringing the partnerships and network together to talk about what this actually means. What does it feel like? What does it look like? How is it going to interact with each one of us? And since then, we've been organizing this land trust together. The steering committee consists of 7 women. It's a women-led organization, multiracial, and I'm the homie, I'm the co-conspirator, schemer. I bring things to the table to like support, but all the decisions are made by survivors, by people who are from the community, right? And we've just been doing so much work and taking our cues from residents, particularly our Black leaders. One of our partners is Jasmine Schuper of Green Line Housing Foundation. And we're working with them to develop our capacity to acquire and land bank together. We're part of a community land banking initiative together, right? And we're also bringing other partners to figure out our development piece. But this entire time, like we're trying to preserve this community to make sure that we don't lose our Black neighbors, right? A lot of folks in these spaces have paid off their homes. They're not working anymore. They're like decades of retirement. Like there's multiple generations of families living together in the same space. And through this process, We've seen how this informal way of living and sharing space together is not recognized by the state. People are being left behind by disaster infrastructure. People are not being able to qualify for the aid that's necessary. The aid that is the large amount of aid that is available is difficult for elders to access, right? And then on top of that, like, you know, the SBA, some Small Business Administration, was giving out like $500,000 loans at 2.56%. I did the math on that. That's $715,000 to repay. So like 40% of that money is going into interest. Who the hell is going to do that? You know, like what we're seeing is that the infrastructure that is set up for recovery does not contain space for our elders. It does not contain space for low income people who are renters who want, or young people who want to buy back into the community but cannot because Altadena, unfortunately, before the fires was already rapidly gentrifying as well, right? And so the community land trust is seen as an opportunity for us to expand our idea of who belongs in this community and to create new forms of collective well-being and housing, right? Allowing new formations. Do I got like 30 seconds or something? Okay, well then, you know, I'm gonna shut up. But like and also I'm happy to defer my spots to Miriam and Adriana, who are residents. Because like at the end of the day, I'm just some guy, right? That's why I'm a non-voting member on the steering committee. But like you show up, you show out, and you show love for the people who show you love.
So thank you, Matt. I just wanted to add that Matt is not just some guy. We strategically wanted to bring Matt in to talk about the importance of solidarity and what that looks like and how we can build it generationally, and for us to talk about openly what are the challenges and name those and then create potential solutions, not just in this room, but moving forward. But before I get to that, I don't know if I don't remember whether or not I brought Zarita Jones into the space. But wanted to call out Zarita Jones. Raise your hands, Zarita Jones. So Zarita Jones is on the board, was the vice chair, I think, of our community land trust, and also the executive director of JEPWA, and wanted to name her. And as we talked about again, our liberty vision on our ecosystem, again, it was focused on bringing in them homeowners up in the hills, along with the Section 8 renters, a couple of blocks from the mall, and the middle class folks who were living in Lamert Park, and the unhoused folks who were all in Africa Town or Lamert Park, and how we had to bring those folks together and the challenges with that. Now we wanted to open up the space for dialogue and conversation. And I'm going to ask folks for this, that that for the Black folks in the room, to please feel free to speak openly about anything that you're interested in, but also to challenge the non-Black people in the space, our allies, and y'all came here for a reason, to not just ask questions or ask us for solutions. That happens a lot. But what are you all bringing into the space? What are the things, if you're here because you want to build in solidarity with Black community, how do you identify and name the challenges? Be upfront about it. And so we can build real solutions together. Again, get in front of the fact that we're 60 years, or we're 1 year away from the 60th anniversary of the Black Panther Party. And while everybody is struggling, Black struggle looks completely different. So, thoughts? Who wants to jump in? Questions? Yes, sister. Hey, can you give me your name, please?
I'm not representing any organization, but my name is Nefesha, go by Nef. I live here in the Central Valley, but I'm from New Jersey originally, Philly, Jersey area. And professionally, I work for California for the Arts, so I do statewide arts advocacy. I get to just travel around the state a lot, but I love the Central Valley. And one of the things that I bring to this conversation is here in Fresno, where Black community is about 7%. I often say we need to prioritize Black people and we need a community land trust for Black people because Black problems are very different. But the feedback that I get in the Central Valley is, well, it's such a small community. How do we do that? And why do we need to do that? I think there's cause for it. There's climate issues for where Black people live here in Fresno. There's also people being moved out. Gentrification is very real, as we know, and there's a lack of access to healthy foods, land to be able to produce our own foods. We were talking earlier about Allensworth and the work you're doing there. But I wanted to bring into the conversation because we're talking about places like Oakland, places like LA, where there's a larger Black community. But here in the Central Valley, if we say we need something for Black people, believe me, in a room, you're going to get the weird looks. And it's like, but there is a need for this because Black problems are very unique.
Thank you for naming that, Neff. And that's why we have this diverse panel, including rural, central CLTs in the space. Would anybody like to respond to Neff's point? Koa, Paul, Danielle, Princess? Oh, who said that? What did you say?
I said, I agree.
Okay, agreement. Yes, we should build the space and unapologetically. We get the same crazy, the same weird stares in LA. We get them in the Bay Area. About anybody struggle with me? Yeah, you just name Black and folks are, and I want to be upfront about that because I think we all know that. Please struggle with me if we don't. Okay. I know some other folks in this room. We've been having these conversations for years. So, what else? Other questions, other points that folks would like to raise?
I usually don't speak, so this is getting me out of my comfort zone. My name is Patrice. I live in South Pasadena right now. Currently, originally from San Jose, California, born and raised. Um, Having a question just to like the LA folks, the impact of the Olympics upcoming. Is anyone talking about that somewhere? Maybe I can just get plugged in.
Is that it?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I see a hand that went up there, and I was about to say which Olympics, because there was the '84 Olympics. There was an issue there with push out that started with some of the gentrification and displacement of Black communities. So that goes back to '84. But did you want to respond? Specifically, so there's no Olympics, but again, we are in the rooted in Black resistance. So this is also what is the impact potentially on Black community? What are we thinking about? We got Zach from Ace in the Space who's in South Central too. What are y'all thinking about? So everybody is welcome to jump. Adriana, did you want to respond? Or Zach, can Zach go first? And Adriana?
Thank you, Zach from ACE, also formerly with Oakland Community Land Trust. We're a part of a coalition called Home Team, which is we're hoping to get a legislative sponsor like Sade El Hawari. Please push her on this if y'all can, to forward legislation that will require that each of the tickets that are sold for the Olympics have a community surcharge that would go to support greening, infrastructure, that would go to support affordable housing to mitigate the impact of displacement. But we're very concerned. We have buildings all over Expo Park where tenants are constantly under the risk of being redeveloped. And our mayor, Karen Bass, has an ED1, which is mandating density. And it's not happening in Sherman Oaks. It's happening right near where our communities live. And it's having an unintended impact of displacing our folks. So the Home Team Coalition is a great effort to join in, along with Trust Self LA as well, to create dollars using both the Olympics and the World Cup and the Super Bowl, all these activities. And so we're hopeful that Tina McKenna, who's in Inglewood on the assembly, will help support that because she got a transit surcharge. So they're going to charge $10 to support LA Metro, but we should definitely see something for our communities as well. Thank you.
Do you need the mic?
Hi, I'm Adriana from Altadena, Earthseed. I just wanted to share, like, there is a lot of anxiety from Black and Brown communities in LA about the Olympics, because of the massive amounts of investment that our local agencies put into the Olympics and the displacement effect that they have as well. I think just continuing to name that and especially when like after the disaster, um there's such an intense and immense amount of investment that needs to occur for families to be able to rebuild, and seeing so many people get pushed out of the area and the state because of the insane cost of living that families also have to pay their mortgage and their reverse mortgage, and then um, there's a SoCal Edison like wildfire relief fund that was opened using state dollars for our state um fund. And there's intricacies to that too, where if you opted into that, you would actually have to close, from my understanding, you would have to close your insurance claim in order to accept that money. And we know that that fund was started in response to PG&E not having the liquidity to pay out the damages that they did from wildfires in Northern California. But SoCal Edison actually does have liquidity. And so why is it that our state is covering the corporate agents um, when the corporation can actually pay out what is owed to the people? And so I think it's like, like the Olympics and um, other large corporations having basically the lobbyists, I went up to with the honestly the support of California CLT network, myself, our brother Zaire, who is a Black voice of Altadena. His family founded the mosque in Altadena that burned down, and he was bringing up the fact that we need to leverage that a little bit more and say, hey, since you are having the money so easily to invest in the Olympics, like how is it that you can't invest in us? You can't invest in the Black community, and really holding that as a way to leverage, as a way to strategize.
Okay, I thinking the same thing. Ah, yeah, we probably are thinking the same thing. I'm like, let's kind of get real for a moment, right? Let's be real. What's the ideas? We talking about how can we be in solidarity? Okay, a lot of CLT's missions, right? And their mission is to help low income people, right? Get people in a people know majority well, in my life, I don't know the data around this is stats, but in my life, in my world, majority of low income people are Black people, Hispanic people. We say this in our mission. Is your board majority Black? Do you have Black faces on your board making decisions? Some of us need Black representatives to let some of us know some of the things ain't cool, right? So is your board majority? Are you putting in policies or priorities around Black representatives on your board, in your staff, right? In your homes? Do you have majority Black people in your homes? Like let's be real about this for a minute. Let's talk about how we can really be in solidarity with each other, and that's us really putting in those policies and priorities to explicitly say this is for Black people in my organization.
Could I add before that? And is it important to have Black people that can be trusted to move a Black line also? Is it not just to have Black bodies on the board?
And in solidarity spaces, right? And in the CLT network. And this is for the CLT network, for all of you. We say BIPOC a lot. We say people of color a lot. But a lot of times, most of the time, you actually don't mean Black people. You forget the Black and BIPOC. If your communities aren't 50% at least Black, what are you doing? There are 1, 2, 3, 4 Black executive directors of CLTs in the state of California. We need you to be more intentional about the Black and BIPOC. in this network. We need you to be more intentional about including our cultures in these spaces. We want to be allies, but we need stronger allyship. And it is not a shirt. It is not a fist. It is truly showing up for us in every way possible that you can. And maybe even a little bit more that makes you a little uncomfortable. And I am speaking out of love because I love so many of you in this room. I love my board. I love my job. But if we forget the Black and BIPOC, we are not doing our BLT mission, vision, service justice. And I implore you to not forget the Black and BIPOC. People of color, say Black, please, because we're here and we matter too.
Thank you. And can you say your names again, please?
Thank you, Tamika. Sister Tamika, thank you. Name's Arthur Robinson, and since I would like to share this group therapy session that we're having, um, I'm in mourning, I'm in loss, I'm in grief, and I'm going to go a little bit longer, but I think what needs to be said needs to be said and addressed. Being Black is having a good day and finding out someone Black, either died or was killed for no reason. And then you have to think about it all day, or you not to. You have to cope. You have to be here in these spaces. Numb yourself to the feeling. It's a constant emotion war, one with no end in sight. And I think that is where I'm at with losing a soldier by the name of Assad. And I think so much about the question that was posed when we came in here, which is like, you can be anywhere else. Why this workshop? And let me answer that question with a question. What is healing if the wound is never addressed? Brother Malcolm says that really well with his analogy about the knife. And we're giving up if you haven't heard it. I think for what we're trying to talk about, we're really discussing, I think it's about it's that Black and African is a 4-letter word that we can't say. And we want to do these things and build. We want to understand that no one gets free unless we all get free. But if we have these distinctions, we have these problems. If conflation of BIPOC is the thing that's separating us, what's happening? And I think so much of when we talk about class, we don't talk about race or gender or sexuality or immigration or formerly incarcerated, just to name a few, the intersections that allow me to even have space on being a stolen person on stolen land. What are we really doing here? Sometimes we think about that. And I don't want to take too much time. I know there's other voices, there's other people that need to be heard and said and shared and expressed. And I thank you for allowing me the space and the grace to do this right now. But I will end this with 3 quotes. It's not enough to change the system. We need to change ourselves. We can't afford to be spectators while our lives deteriorate. We have to truly love our people and to make that love stronger. We have nothing to lose by our chains. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for your thoughtfulness and being here. And I wanted to pick up what you were saying about being more intentional. SCLTs with the Black, in a way, maybe that we can do that, which is something I'm curious about in the aftermath of the reparations report by the state of California and what has come out of that, which is basically different ways that we can make recommendations around policy. And there's a specific tract around housing, right? And I wonder, SELTs, what is our role and opportunity to pursue actual creation of legislation that embeds reparations in terms of the folks that we're trying to support, right? And I can point to one policy that just got passed is AB 57, and that's for the California Dreams for All Act. They are reserving 10% every year. This is a down payment assistance program for the descendants of enslaved Africans. That just got passed, right? So is that something we as CLTs can actively try to advocate for and promote and pursue in the spirit of making sure we don't forget about Black and BIPOC, right? So what other ways can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. As a Black person, who wants his reparations? My mama's reparations and all of her. I really appreciate that you brought reparations up because when I worked in the CLT, I would often get the question, "Is the CLT a form of reparations?" And it absolutely is not. In my opinion, it's a means worthy of reparating into, but it is not a solution to the harm that was done. It is not a repayment compensates the harm and the extraction that occurred from our communities, be it slavery, be it urban renewal, be it the continued harm of redlining. And so I think it is important that a group like the CLT network take on in its platform reparations, because we can't get to some of the solution to house our people without that fundamental correction of the harm that gets us on an equal platform as Black people. And the last thing I'll say is that oftentimes, I know in Oakland, I imagine in Sacramento, other places, the communities where we work are communities that were formerly majority Black, right? And are we being accountable to the fact that those foreclosed homes were like taken from Black people? And are we intentional about returning those homes to Black people? Because the price point works out for our model and our pro formas, right? Does that then return to Black people so that we're in that model? But we need our reparations, and I hope we can adopt that as a part of our platform as a network. Thank you.
And then we're going to take one more response, and then we'll start to wrap up because we started a little late coming in from lunch.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Chiwetta. I am a manager on the consulting team at Nonprofit Finance Fund. It's a CDFI, but I work um, on the consulting side. One thing I also want to say is, yes, the Olympics are coming in 28, but let's also remember the World Cup is coming to the States next year. And I don't know all of the locations, but LA is also a location as a kind of test run to see how we will respond to the World Cup. So that is also, I don't have resources, but that's also something to look into as well. Um, this is just a resource for folks. So at Nonprofit Finance Fund, one of our partners is called Black Equity Collective. They're based down here in LA, but they're working all throughout California, and they're focusing on resiliency planning. They don't like using capacity building. So they work on resiliency planning and Black permanency, and focusing on Black-led and Black-serving organizations within California. And they really work as a membership organization, and then calling in, whatever you want to call it, funders about giving more unrestricted funding to Black organizations to do more work in the community. Another plug, NFF did a study with BEC, Black Equity Collective, about how Black-led and Black-serving organizations contribute heavily to California's economy. So by hiring Black folks, working within community, and then also serving other Black folks, they'll have more money to contribute within their communities and to California. Our call to action was for, again, funders and government organizations to give more money to Black-led organizations. So I say all that to say, please look them up, see how you can get connected to them. They have a lot of resources and a lot of events for folks.
So we've seen a variety of Black specific. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. We will circle back up around a lot of these, and thank you for your openness to be engaged in these conversations and for us to be ongoing around it. Thank you for bringing in real examples of things that we can do, and keeping in mind that, like, City of San Francisco, I think in 2014, while I was at Trust South LA, tried to pass the county passed prioritizing Black people in Section 8 lotteries. And that was knocked down because of civil rights legislation that Black folks fought for in the 60s denied our ability to be able to do that. So how can we work closely with the reparations task force for the state and in local areas? So LA City has one too. How to be thoughtful about how we can use that as ways to protect generational impacts of this on Black lives. And along with your ideas and solutions, continue to build off of those CLT models. And again, how do we lift up Blackness there? And then how do we just name when we come into mixed spaces? We only 6% of the population. We always in mixed spaces. How do we feel comfortable and how do y'all recognize the fact that how do you struggle internally with non-Black populations that y'all are a part of? Talk about reactions that Black bodies get when we lift up Blackness, because we see it. I saw it in this room, in this space. So again, we want to name that and also talk about how do we just visualize these ideas, but how do we make them into reality? And how can we trust you all as partners to be able to build that? But we know we can do it. Were you going to say something? Did you want to try to close us out? And thank you for naming that. And I'm also going to put a challenge out and name this, especially when we're dealing with non-Black Latinos. I know that nobody ever looks at me. And even when I name I'm from Colombia, folks get a little uncomfortable. And so how do we talk about that and the realities of race and Latinidad and why African bodies are named and are normalized? And about the real struggles, even in Mexico, African Mexicanos weren't recognized until 2015, right? And they still exist. And there are still real struggles. And how do we talk about it outside of just mestizaje? And that there's outside of mestizaje, there are also bodies, mixtures, and we talk about mixture a lot. Some of our mixed bodies who are still African, how do we talk about that? And how do we remember that and those struggles and how do we build together across that? So, so thank y'all for being here today. Please come up and talk to us and share and exchange information. All right. Thank you.